Good afternoon. Welcome to Space Apps Vegas 2020 webinar. I'm Candice Wong. I'm at Clark High School and I'm a student volunteer at Nova 77 STEM Workshop. I will serve as your moderator today. Here's our webinar rules and expectations. Please mute your microphones when not speaking. Video is not necessary or required. You may ask questions anytime in the chat, either during the presentation or following. Following the presentation, you may turn on your microphone or you can use the chat. The webinar will be recorded and be posted online. And joining us today is Artash Nath and Arushi Nath, and they just won the Global Winner Award with their project, The Masked Scales, in the NASA Space App COVID-19 Challenge this year. And let's welcome Artash and Arushi Nath.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here and to be talking to you all. So my name is Artash.
And my name's Arushi.
So I'm going to grade 9 next year. And I'm interested in robotics, space exploration, coding, artificial intelligence.
And I'm going to go in grade 6 this September, and I'm interested in space, robotics, and science.
All right. We're going to start by sharing PowerPoint. There we go. So today we're going to be talking to you all about one of the projects that we have made called the Math Skills. And by the way, we're both based in Toronto, Canada. So a little bit of more background on ourselves. We've been making space and science projects for over 6 years. So throughout this time, we've made over 30 projects. And in these projects, we merge a lot of the subjects that we love, such as robots, rockets, drones, and artificial intelligence. And we even love merging these things with things like art and music to make interesting projects. Some of the projects that we've made on hardware.
So one of them is a rocket launch, a model rocket, and one of them is a battle bot. We also made some actual robots, like the ones that look like humans, and we have also made a model of the Kanda arm.
And we've also done several projects that incorporate more of a software part. For example, I have been working a lot on Python and on data sets. So an example of some of the projects in this case would be a project that's able to predict how dangerous an asteroid is to the Earth, or also analyzing exoplanet atmospheres using Python. Now, to make these projects, some of them we've made for maker festivals, but some of them we've also made in hackathons. So we've been to over 35 hackathons. So hackathons, as many of you probably know, is we've given a 48-hour time period and several challenges. And we need to pick one challenge and then try to think of an innovative solution prototype within the time limit, and then make a short presentation. Now, among these hackathons, one of the coolest hackathons are the NASA Space Apps hackathon. These happen every year, and we've been participating ever since 2014, so for 7 years. So in fact, this year, the NASA Space Apps Challenge, so by the way, the NASA Space App Challenge, all the challenges inside this hackathon are related to space exploration in some way, so using data that's from NASA or NASA satellites. And this year, we made our project, but obviously this year the hackathon was online. So of course, you guys have the NASA Space Apps in Vegas. We also have one in Toronto. So we've won the local Toronto Space Apps a few times, but this year we had in fact the honor of winning, going to the global round of the NASA Space Apps this year. So that was definitely an amazing experience, and it was also a great project. And so to learn exactly how to make these projects, so we don't wait for school to tell us how exactly to go around to do it, because school's not gonna teach us everything and it's very structured. So we need to take our learning into our own hands. So we find topics that interest us, and then we go and try to learn more about them on our own, whether is this through online classes or workshops outside.
And then after that, as we believe the best way to learn about a subject is to make a project about it so that you can learn all the parts of it, we decide to make a project.
And of course, at the end of Makeup Project, we always love sharing them with people such as you guys, so that we can both master our own project as well as share it with other people around us. So we're going to be telling you about the project that we made for this year's NASA Space Apps Challenge. And it's called the Masked Scales. Well, the idea or the inspiration behind this project is that after schools shut down, we our online classes were pretty late in the day, so we used to keep waking up very late, and we noticed a lot of changes around us. And before I go more into this project, we're going to show you a small video that'll show you an overview of this project. Oh, before I go on, I just want to confirm that everyone can actually hear the video. All right.
Yes, we can hear it.
All right, great.
COVID-19 closed our school doors, but not windows to education. So we decided to do a project to measure the impacts of COVID-19 lockdown and turn them into a musical. I built an instrument with sensors to measure the changes in light, noise, and pollution. I used an old plastic tray, attached all the sensors, wired them, and programmed them using Arduino.
And I installed a camera outside our house to collect live traffic data. I then used machine learning and image processing to count the number of vehicles on the road. We merged the four data sets collected from our homemade instrument with two external data sets: the Toronto nightlights data from the NASA satellites and the Toronto COVID-19 infection data. We used machine learning and NASA's Earth Observatory Worldview to analyze the changes. We used data sonification to convert our analysis into a music.
Here is our code for Arduino, Python, and machine learning. It is also available on our GitHub account.
Our biggest challenge was merging data from different sensors and Arduinos to a single timestamp to create time series graphs. Here are the graphs of the results we got from analyzing data from the sensors and live traffic flow.
We converted our results into music by playing different datasets with different instruments and notes. For example, marimba in G major played the periodic passage of day and night, and vibraphone for vehicle emissions. Piano in E major for the street noise.
Let's hear it.
In the future, we would like to extend sonification to light and dance movements.
All right, so hopefully that video gave you a short overview of our project, but don't worry, we're going to go into much more details.
But before that, I'm just going to tell you how we got the inspiration to make this project. So it was when school closed, and we were waking up later and later every day because we had no school to go to. And we woke up because of the birds chirping, and that was unusual because normally we woke up because of the loud cars on the road. So we thought, how many other changes could be happening during the COVID-19 lockdown? So we decided to make an instrument to look at all these changes. So actually I have the instrument right here, if you guys can see it.
Some of the changes we actually wanted to understand about what changed is, first of all, there's a sound outside, because during this COVID-19 lockdown, you must have noticed there are much less cars on the road. So we thought that the sound outside would be lower because there are less cars. And on the same concept, we thought that the pollution would also decrease because of the less cars and construction.
So this is the instrument. So I had...
I'm just going to stop sharing screen so you guys can see the instrument.
So it's right here. So this is the light sensor that see how much light is there outside. Because we thought that during the COVID-19 lockdown, offices were closed, so that means less office lights were there. So we wanted to see how much if it has decreased. And right here actually is the sound sensor because if there's less cars and less construction, there would also be less sounds of them. And here is the pollution sensor because there was no cars, so and cars make the most of the pollution, so there would be less pollution. So coming back to the PowerPoint, so I attached all the sensors to a red box. So the pollution sensor, the light sensor, and the sound sensor. I then attached all the sensors to an Arduino. And actually the Arduino was used to control all of the sensors. And I also programmed it in the Arduino language. So, and then I attached all my sensors outside to get live readings.
So, in fact, we left this instrument outside for 3 weeks to keep measuring these changes in sound and pollution across the COVID-19 lockdown. Now,
So now I'm going to show you a short demo of these sensors in work.
all right.
So I'm just going to share it to a different screen.
So, some of you may have heard of Arduino, in fact. So Arduino is pretty basic programming languages that allows you to control sensors, etc. And all the values that come from the
Here
Arduino will
output.
be printed out here.
Here output. So right now, I'm not sure if you can see the box at the same time, but I'm going to cover the light sensor and we'll see if the light reading goes down.
So right now you can see the light reading was 764. And when she put her hand on the light sensor, it came down to 283 or 300. So now if we remove the hand,
Then you'll see in a couple of seconds, went back to 760.
so this would allow us to understand whether it's day or night, because when it's day, obviously the light would be much higher, and at night it would be lower.
Now I'm going to show you a demo of the sound sensor. Right now, you can see the sound sensor is around 270. Now I'm just going to switch on an alarm clock. And you can see that it's gone up a bit.
And so one of the reasons the alarm clock might not be affecting it is because obviously we can't put it too loud at this time.
And also because before it was looking at the volume of our speaking, so it would be much different from the volume of the alarm clock. So unfortunately right now, I cannot show you the values of the dust sensor because the dust sensor takes a lot of time to get the values, 1 minute, and it's not the same time as the other sensors, and it takes a lot of time to get stabilized values.
Well, now that's how we got the measurements for pollution, sound, and light. But that's not it. We also wanted to understand the change in traffic outside our road. So I took a camera. So in fact, I have the camera with me right now. So I took this camera and then put it on my window so that it could look at the road, as you can see in this short clip of a video of cars passing on the street. Now, there were several different steps I had to take to create a program that saw that video that you are looking at right now and counts the number of cars it sees. So these are the 5 steps the camera does. First of all, my program takes 2 pictures. So it takes one picture, waits a quarter of a second, and then takes another picture. Why is this? Well, we know that all vehicles that we'll be seeing are going to be moving at that time. So if it sees, then it looks at the difference between the 2 photos to see which are the parts of the photo that are moving. So obviously, before doing that, it has to narrow its observations down to just the road because we don't want to look at any vehicles that are not on the road, or we don't want to look at bicycles or pedestrians. We just want to look at cars in this case. So it subtracts these two images. Shut your microphone if you. So it subtracts these two images, and then, so in fact, it might be easier if I show you a visual. So here you'll definitely recognize these two pictures of our street. So you can see two streetcars, or probably one bigger streetcar, and a car moving here. So obviously you can see that also we've blacked out the parts that are not the road. And so this is a pre-programmed thing. I have coded the equations for these lines in the program so it only selects that area. So after subtracting the images, so we subtract each corresponding pixel by each other, we get this. So when subtracting it, all the pixels that did not have moving objects or vehicles will stay black. But the vehicles that were moving will get lighted up, as you can see here. Now we color all these pixels that are lighted up with one, or yellow in this case. And then I've created a program that goes through the images and counts how many of these blobs we have. So in this case, it counted two vehicles, which is pretty accurate. Now in this case, we have a couple more cars inside our image. We have one up here, we have one here, here, and here. And after subtracting the images, you can see two main big globs in the center. But you can also see two here and here. And once it converts all of these into yellow, the color yellow, it's able to identify four main objects inside this image. Now, it repeats this same process every 5 seconds. So every 5 seconds, it counts how many cars does it see outside. So here's a video of, on the left screen, there'll be the cars moving, and on the right, there'll be the globs, or the moving objects inside that image. So like right now, there's no, then, and then obviously it counts the number of blobs to get the vehicle count. Now, in this part, there were actually a lot of challenges because video processing is not that simple. So first of all, there was removing the movements that were not on the road. So as I said before, we had blacked them out using just normal programming, but we had to manually remove the parts that were not the road. And this was hard because each time we changed the camera position, we had to change the parts that were blocked out, and we had to redefine which part of the image was actually the road. Now, another challenge was when vehicles were really close to each other, they appeared as just one vehicle instead of two. So to solve that challenge, I had to code in a size threshold. So that means that if it looked too big, it could count it as two cars. Also, it wouldn't count any vehicles that were just stationary. And also, if we were to place this camera at a crossroad where there's vehicles in different directions, that could also pose a challenge.
So in whole, we used two different kinds of data sets. One is the data connected from the homemade instruments and the camera. So the street noise, the emissions, how many cars there are, and how much light there is. And the second part is the external data. That has two parts. One is the NASA nightlight data from the Swami, and the second one is the daily COVID-19 infection data in Toronto.
Because the whole idea was that we wanted to merge as much data as possible. And the reason we chose to get nightlight data from the Swami satellite, so in fact, what this means is that we're getting from the top of the city of Toronto, how many lights does it see? Because we thought that people are not going to go to office during this COVID-19 lockdown. So the office lights inside the city must be slightly lower. And we also entered the COVID-19 case data because we thought that that's also a very important change would happen during the lockdown, because that would actually show how the COVID-19 cases are, or how the COVID-19 cases are actually affected by this lockdown.
And we use a couple of techniques while the whole making process. So for the sensors, I use something called serial bridge to transmit data from two different programming languages. So the first programming language was Arduino to get the data from the sensors. Then the second one was Python to analyze this data.
We also used a NASA tool called Worldview, and this is where we got the nightlight data tool. But we were not satisfied yet. So mouse doesn't seem to be appearing on the screen. All right, so here, I'm going to stop sharing. Perhaps I'll reload PowerPoint. All right, so this is a sample of some of the codes that we use. So we used Arduino code. So
To get the data from the sensors, and the Python one is to analyze the data and to put it in an Excel file.
and then we also use Python for the machine learning part. And in fact, if you want to have a more in-depth look at the code, you can check out our GitHub. Put the link a bit later.
So my biggest challenge using for the sensors was merging data from sorry, this screen just changed.
Yeah, Google Hangouts seem to be lagging the PowerPoint slides.
Sometimes it happens.
Switch off audio.
Okay, so we're gonna reshare it now.
What are you trying to do?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, this is
Okay. It's working.
Oh, it's because, in fact, the PowerPoint's not actually responding to our movements while we're sharing. So, all right, let's just explain this slide. So from each of these, right now we're of what kind of data we collected. We collected light data, we collected sound data, we collected traffic data, we collected pollution data, and we also collected data from the Toronto COVID-19 cases.
I'll explain this one.
Just a second. In fact, what happens is that obviously we face a lot of technical problems that happen to us pretty often. So in fact, that's one of the most important skills we've had to develop throughout our experience, because sometimes our programs don't work out, or there's some bugs in the program. So it's really important to build up your problem solving skills. And in fact, the only way to do that is to make projects, and then when they go wrong, try to fix them, and then repeat this process until you become good enough to be able to solve most errors that could come in your program.
Well, so now, as you saw in the previous slide, we have the graphs. But that was not enough for us because we could only see it. But we actually wanted to hear the difference during the COVID-19 lockdown. And as I like piano and my brother likes playing the guitar, I decided to have a separate instrument for each data.
Okay, there. I think we're able to get this slide back now. So we actually plotted each of these different things in this plot. So the first graph you see is for pollution. So it started on the 26th of March, and after the lockdown, you can see the pollution levels considerably increased. So they went up to 25,000, while during the lockdown, they were down to 20,000. So it was a pretty significant change that happened after the lockdown.
And for the street sounds, it starts on the 26th of April. And then you can see that after the lockdown, it's going in higher values, 1,000. And for the next one, the street lights, you can see that it's quite constant. And that was a bit surprising, but it was a good way to differentiate the days and nights.
So, and finally, we had the traffic count data. So this is a diagram of two different days for both the same times. And on each plot, it shows how many cars is seen at each time period. So in fact, I added up the number of cars for each of these days. And after the COVID-19 lockdown, the number of cars on the road, in fact, doubled. So there was two times more cars on the road after this lockdown. And this was one of the most significant changes that we measured.
Yeah, so as I said before, we wanted to actually put this data into a musical. So we have separate instruments for each of our sensors. So we used the marimba instrument to look at the passage of days and nights, which is the light, and we play that in G major. We then used a vibraphone to look at how much pollution the cars are making. We used the piano to look at the street noise in E major. And we used the flute to look at the daily COVID-19 infection rates. But this was not enough. There were still two things missing. How much traffic was on the road and the nightlight data from the NASA satellites. So we used those two, so the machine learning and the satellites, for the tempo of the musical. So now we're gonna replay the musical so that we can hear it again.
So in fact, the reason we wanted such a tempo inside our musical is because we wanted our music to be very rich and diverse. So in this video, it'll in fact be the reverse way around. So in fact, let me just play it for you now. So this is when we went out of lockdown, which is why the tempo has decreased. So and it's amazing that each of the instruments inside this music was by some sensor that we measured, that something that changed during the lockdown, and the music didn't actually turn out that bad either. So now that's, I guess, the end of the presentation of our project. But we love doing outreach and sharing our projects and giving workshops in several different places, especially with other students. So
And we have joined lots of organizations that help us in our journey. For example, the Ontario Science Center, which I used to go to a lot of times when I was younger to look at all the exhibitions. And the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, which I still go every year to look at their very big telescopes. And also, for more about coding, we go to places like Coder Dojo and Kids Code Jeunesse.
and in fact, we would encourage all of you to join more organizations that just like the Nova organization, which could help to build up your knowledge and meet a lot of different people. Because it's very important while making projects to network and discuss with other people in your team. Because you may not be able to do a project alone, but you can seek help from other people in your network that may know more about some topics than you. And then in return, you may be able to help them in some of their projects. So networking is definitely a very amazing part of science and projects. So that's the end of our presentation, and we would be happy to answer any of your questions about space in general or about this project.
Yes, so now if you guys have any questions, you guys can unmute or just type in the chat box. So the first question is, a lot of our students use microbit instead of Arduino. Do you think microbit also works in your project?
Well, so in fact, the quick answer is that it does, because microbit also has a lot of functionalities and it's a bit simpler to use, probably. So microbit sensors, so if you have a temperature sensor and a sound sensor and you're able to attach them to a microbit, you could easily use some of the inbuilt microbit libraries, like in the Java blocks, to be able to get the inputs from these sensors and then output them by serial to a serial monitor. So this is definitely possible in microbit.
And did you use pre-trained models in your project? If yes, which one did you use?
So in this project, so the model I used for directing the cars, that was pretty heavy on image processing. Uh, but I've also experimented a lot with being able to distinguish cars and streetcars. Because one of the things we do have to remember is that streetcars would tend to have more people than cars. So if we really want to look at the number of people that are commuting on the streets, we want to tell the difference between the two. So one thing that I experiment with is a convolutional neural network to look at the pictures of all the vehicles it sees and distinguish whether they're a car or a streetcar. And to do this, it just looks at the important parts of the images. So just like if you wanted to tell the difference between a car and a streetcar, you would obviously know the streetcar would look bigger. It probably has more wheels. It's maybe red in color. Cars could be smaller and just have four wheels or more windows. So this network does exactly the same thing. Uh, and most of the time, I train the neural networks on my own.
Any more questions? What algorithm did you use?
Well,
Which algorithm did you use for your image classification?
For the current one that I explained, uh, it looks at image processing, so it's most telling looked at the moving vehicles, which doesn't require a comprehensive model. But as I said, I again used a convolutional neural network to
Okay.
classify the images between cars and streetcars.
So congratulations and thank you for presenting. You have a lot of experience. What have you learned and what advice do you have for beginners?
Well, yeah, for sure. Well, there are a lot of things you can, in fact, do just as a beginner, and you can definitely get on a learning path real quick. So the first thing you really need to do is just find something that really interests you. Because as we said, the best way of learning, even if you're a beginner, is by making just small projects. And these are the ones that really make you learn. Uh, so in fact, once you come up with something you want, so the first thing, I guess, before even trying to learn anything, you really want to pick a project that you want to focus on. And make it a project that you're passionate about, that solve a problem that you want to solve. Now, once you've done that, you want to know, okay, what exactly do I want to learn to be able to do this project? Do I need to learn how to code? Do I need to learn how to do robotics? Now, once you understand what exactly you need to learn, there are several ways to learn these things. For an example of this would be online classes, because right now there's a ton of online classes that you can take that could tell you about anything. So some of the recommended, I guess I would say, would be Udemy, EDX, or Coursera. All of them, maybe look for a course that's offered by an official university, I guess, if you want a more proper course. And most of these courses are in fact free or very cheap, so you can take them easily. And once you learn what you need to learn, then you're ready to start working on your project. And then you just repeat this process. Whatever you need to learn, you go network or take more online classes.
And would you comment how you started your own machine learning projects? What is your first machine learning project?
Sure. Well, I started learning first of all Python around 5 years ago or 4 or 5 years ago. So the first language I learned, by the way, was Arduino, which is more of a robotics language. Uh, but machine learning itself, I got into around 1.5 to 2 years ago. And the reason I wanted to get into machine learning is because it sounded cool to be able to automate processes, and it would give a much more bigger range to the projects we could accomplish. Uh, so the first machine learning project that I did, as I recall, was a project on detecting the risks of asteroids colliding with the Earth. Now, this was a really simple machine learning model that I used. So, in fact, the first version of this project used a single neuron that was just mathematically coded into Python. And what this did is it trained itself because I had a data set of around a couple 700 values. And this data set had a couple of different things about the asteroid. So it had the size of the asteroid, the speed of the asteroid, and the orbit of the asteroid, or you could say the distance to the asteroid. And it had the result of a risk index, which is how dangerous it is to Earth. So this was a regression algorithm. So it was really simple. It just trained itself, and then for new asteroids, was able to get the same risk. And this was definitely the first project I made that used machine learning. But eventually, I upgraded the project to make it a bit better, and I started experimenting with neural networks that are much larger. So that I had 32 neurons, or multiple layers, and then I progressed off there.
Thank you guys for your answers and questions. Did you post your data sets online?
So the data that we collected for this project, we haven't shared it. Though we could, if you would like to have a look at the data set yourself. But the format of this data is just an Excel sheet for the data from the sensors. But storing the data from the pictures might be a little bit harder, and it's a very big database since this was recording pictures all day. Uh, so I would recommend if you would like to replicate results of this project, perhaps do your own experiment. If you want to get the data that we used, I guess you could contact us if you would like, and we might be able to send it to you.
Okay. What is your favorite algorithm? Well, algorithm. What is your favorite algorithm on deep learning, LSTM?
That's a great question. Uh, since that first project I've told you about, I've definitely looked through a lot of different algorithms, and each algorithm is made to solve a specific task. Like convolutional networks are meant to work on images or videos, while LSTMs or recurrent neural networks are meant to work on series or time series data. So I've worked with a lot of these algorithms, but I guess some of my favorites, I guess, would be GANs or pix-to-pix models. So these are models that are meant to create artworks. So you could, for example, take a picture of the scenery around you and convert it to a style that perhaps Van Gogh could have painted. Those are really interesting models, and because they actually create visual art that you can see. But one of the models I find the most useful are hybrid models. So how this works is, let's say I wanted to do a problem where I both looked outside and I heard sounds and I wanted to give some kind of output, right? Well, in this case, I wouldn't be using just one network, I would be using two networks. So one network would work on the sound, network would work on the images, and then I would merge them together. And that's another favorite of mine since it's come out very useful.
And are you planning to take any classes or involve outside kids in your projects?
Well, so actually, we are always taking online classes to expand our learning.
And I think, oh, classes for other kids, I think. Well, for now at least, most of our projects we like to do at home, especially with the COVID-19 lockdown. But we do like to collaborate with other students if we meet them at hackathons or events. And we don't offer proper classes, but we do offer workshops here and then at different events. So if you want to stay posted on what we do, so I'm just going to share our website where we, let's see there. So this is the website where we share most of our projects. So this gives a very good overview of each of our projects and could help inspire you or give you some ideas for your project. And I'm also putting the Twitter handle. So if we ever do any workshops or classes that you would like to have a look at, then you can check out the Twitter.
And how is about the accuracy about your model in your project? How did you handle overfitting?
Well, I would like to emphasize that in this project, it was less on an actual machine learning algorithm, but a very heavy amount on actual image processing. But uh, I definitely had to handle overfitting and everything in several of my previous projects. And the way I do this is it's definitely comes with a lot of experience because once you keep making different models to solve different problems, you get an idea on how to tune a network because there's several different things you have to do to create a neural network. So there's a number of layers you use. There's how fast does it learn, called the learning rate, and it's all about tweaking these values or randomly putting values until you get a good idea of where would the best value be.
What kind of coding class do you recommend for beginner?
For if you want to learn Python, which I think is a really useful language for a lot of things since it has so many libraries, you can do any of the projects you would like using Python uh, or Raspberry Pi. Um, some of the coding classes, I guess any normal coding class, if you want to take it online, is all right. The one I took is called the Python Bible. So in fact, I can search that up soon and post the link in the chat if you would like. But if you don't want to go online, I think there's several events that are organized by local organizations around you that focus on coding. So I guess like meetup groups, for example, would could be a good idea. But I'll try posting a link later in that.
Um, and after you're done searching, can you tell about the coding journey that you learned, like from scratch programming to machine learning?
Yeah, actually. So I also started with Scratch a couple of years ago, and I was very interested in like what it can do, and I wanted to do more than that. And then I heard about a second programming language called Arduino, which was the one that I used for the sensors. And I also like that one a lot because I can program motors, sensors, lights, and I got very interested. So I started on Python, and that's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, because
Great.
each language is definitely focusing on a different thing. And I did post a Udemy link to the course that I took a year back on Python. So it's not that expensive. In USD, it's like around 14 or 15 USD. Uh, and it gives you a pretty comprehensive introduction to Python. So it focuses on all the basic things you need to learn for Python, but any other course would also work, not necessarily this one.
Thank you guys very much. And I really like the fact that you incorporated music with respect to the data trends. Could you explain the process of converting these trends into musical notes?
Yes. So basically, what we did is first we looked at each of our sensors, and then we looked at how big the values were. And depending on how big the values were, we got a higher or lower pitch note. And then we put one note, like for example, some of them we use G for the whole time. And we to make this music, we used a software called Musical Algorithms. We can post a link right now.
Yes, I just posted a link to the algorithm that we used to make this music in chat. Uh, so about the pitch of the musical, if you want to get a bit more instrumental, so the higher the value of the um, the higher the value, for example, if we're looking at pollution, the higher the value of pollution, the higher pitch of that sound. But I think in addition, I just want to add quickly that one of the most important things that you would do anytime when making a project, you really need to dedicate yourself to it. You need to dedicate and give yourself time to actually make this project. Because I remember for several of my projects, I remember spending hours trying to code as some kind of an algorithm or trying to debug or find errors in my code. So that will definitely come with experience. So like personally, I might dedicate in a specific project, even 1 to 2 hours every day, sometimes.
And how did you learn space? Other than joining RASC, how can we equip knowledge in space?
Sure. Well, so aside from joining some kind of a local space organization, I'm sure Vegas has a ton apart from the Rosmasai of Canada, which is only in Canada. But United States definitely has a ton of organizations on space itself. So I guess you could look that up on Google. But another thing that you could do to learn about space is just go out in your backyard, go into your balcony, and look up. And I'm pretty sure in Vegas you'll be able to see quite a decent amount of stars in the sky. So you can look on Google, learn about the constellation. You can look at the moon and learn about moon phases all on your own online, very simply. And this could definitely be a great start to get you into space. And if you have a telescope, you can also, or binoculars for that matter, you can definitely look up and just look at any of your stars of interest. And that's definitely a great way to start you getting your interest into space.
How do you know about sensors and hardwares? Did you learn it separately?
Well, so as I said before starting to learn Python, I was only doing Arduino. So then I took a lot of online courses about each of the different kind of sensors, how to use them, what are their uses, and I also looked at my own trying different circuits, seeing which one worked the best, and changing my code depending on which one I wanted to do.
So with most of the sensors have if you buy any kind of sensor, they're not very expensive. So you can just look at the label on the back of the sensor and search it up online. And there's a ton of tutorials that show you exactly how to wire this sensor and what code you need to do it.
Congrats on your RSC certification. And sorry, can you give the link for hardware sensor learning? I didn't understand the name.
Uh, there isn't any name I gave in particular. But what I meant is that for any sensor you have that you want to learn more about, you can just look at the label. There'll be a label on the back of the sensor which has the name of the sensor and as well as a code. And all you have to do is paste that up on Google, and you'll find a ton of tutorials that tell you exactly how to work these sensors.
And did you have a mentor for your space apps project?
Uh,
Actually, no. So during the space apps, as we said, we participated for many years. When it was offline, there was some mentors going around helping everyone in some specific project or specific parts.
Especially when we were very new to hackathons, mentors were really useful. In fact, that's one of the recent reasons you should all go to hackathons in your area. Even if you're just a student, you can definitely take up a project and solve some challenges because they're great mentors at hackathons that can guide you through this process.
Who are your role models?
Well, we don't particularly like to inspire ourselves from just one person. Instead, we like to forge our own paths into space exploration and robotics. We like to make our own journey instead of looking at one particular role model.
But some of the role models that we have is the Canadian astronauts because they really inspired us. For example, the Jennifer Setti, when we met her in 2017 at the Canadian Space Agency, she was very interested in combustion, but she did not know how to fly a plane. Now, in only like 3 years, she can fly lots of different kinds of planes.
Did you use any Canadian Space Agency's data or just NASA's open data?
No, in this project, we just used NASA satellite data.
Okay. NASA is everywhere. Yes. Would you comment how we should use them and find them?
Sure. So NASA's data, I think one of the sources that we use is Worldview. So I guess I could post a link to that in the chat. But I guess you have to do is go on the NASA website. So I'm just gonna repost it here, and you can experiment on your own and search, and you'll definitely find any kind of data that you would like to use.
Which API did you use?
We didn't use any APIs to fetch the data. We just downloaded it.
Thank you. And any questions? More questions? What other language did you use other than Python?
We just use Python, Arduino. Python, Arduino, the main language we use. And if that's for the questions, then it's been great talking to all of you and sharing about this project and answering all of your questions. So thank you.
And thank you. And thank you guys for taking this time and giving us a wonderful presentation about this beautiful machine learning project. And thank you everyone for joining us today, for being attentive and asking good questions. Thank you guys. Oh, there's one more question actually, I think. Do you come up with a new project every year and then start learning the skills and knowledge to complete it?
Well, actually, we make several projects a year. So once we decide which project to do, we focus ourselves completely on that project by learning skills. And then after we finish the project, we show it at different places like maker fairs. And then we start on a new project.
And how did you get started? Is there a kit or a package with models or projects?
Well, I would recommend once again to start on your own. But if you want some of the more basic parts, I guess you could use is on Arduino and just normal sensors. Anything that you have at home can be used to make a project.
Okay. I guess this is our last question. And thank you guys again all for joining us. And thank you guys for giving us this presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And we hope to see you again.
Yes.
Thanks.
Have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.